Let me move then to the Continuous Improvement Committee. And I think the slide deck is coming up again for us here. And this one, this is one of the earlier assignments that I had joining the board. And boy, it fits my skill set. When I studied for my MBA, I studied change management and strategic management. And I was really delighted for the opportunity to leverage those skills. And that's what we did as a business early on in our corporate life, was to help organizations to understand their business practices and to actually implement their program, their ideas, their vision even better. So I'm super excited to do this. And what we do as a committee is that we are uncomfortable with the status quo. We're always looking at well, what do we expect our performance to be? Are we achieving what we expect our performance to be? And we are relentless in trying to see what are we hitting our marks, and are we improving? Are we continuously improving? And so we're looking for folks to join the committee who also are not comfortable with the status quo, who brings entrepreneurial spirit, who likes to challenge what's before us and trying to improve. That's what we're looking to do. This first charge, let's look at that for a minute. And we have several charges, but we're really good as a continuous improvement committee in being laser focused on those aspects of the program in which we have the time and the resources to make a real difference. So let me list these charges, and I'm gonna highlight them, and then I'm gonna really target on those that we prioritize and which we made significant improvements. First charge, number one, to evaluation is design. Evaluation is review of the elements of our policies, programs, and processes, and that's what we do as a number one charge of our committee. Is the evaluation design. Evaluation outcomes. And the next one on charge number three, we're looking at this whole idea why we were born is in terms of, are we improving in terms of these key measures of performance that we've agreed on, informed by the state plan and others? Are we improving at the local level and throughout our program? Our benchmarks, do we know what they are? Are we meeting our workforce quality and earnings benchmarks? And what can we do better in those regards? And 5 and 6, we hear this all the time. What kind of information do we have? And is it relevant? Is it timely? Is it uniform? Is it accessible? Is it usable? We've accepted that charge as well. And then we get other assignments as the board sees fit for us. Let me look now at some of these priorities of the CIC. And for clarity, I wanted to be as specific as I could on this. The first one is policy evaluation. One of the things that we notice as members of the board, that's what our CIC members are, we're just around the board like everybody else, but we recognize that the policies that were coming before us were different in many cases from one sector to another, or one organization to another, even from one policy to another. And one of the first things we thought was important to do in terms of our work was to evaluate policy and to make some a judgment as to and try to improve that policy and make it more uniform. And one of the greatest successes I believe about our committee is that we've identified a IWIB policy process, a template, a clear flow chart, if you will, in terms of how the policy should start and how it should end, and how it should have evaluation elements, have clear performance targets, test our targets against the state plan. And so that was one of the earliest things that we accomplished as a CIC, was to understand that policy process and make some improvements to it. The next aspect, in terms of the priorities that you see there, is point number 2. Developing and understanding how the WIOA programs are evaluated and how to continuously improve such a program when it's so humongous. When we talk about Titles 1, Title 2, Title 3, let's look at the next ones, and we're going to talk about how to evaluate those too. Let's look at the next slide, because it highlights I think a key point that we wanted to make relative to, first, these are in terms of how do you, let's stay with this one for a minute. In terms of how do we continuously improve the various titles in which we're responsible as a board, how do you evaluate your outcomes? Well, these are the work groups that were charged with allowing us to accomplish that. Let's look at the performance work group. The performance work group has its own charge. All of our work groups have charges or should have charges like this. Their key charge as a performance work group was to identify the specific targets by fiscal year and by measure for each title. Those targets that were negotiated with their respective federal agencies. So we know what the targets are. So the question is, how are we performing in practice against those targets? And that's where we now move to those priorities that we see now. The first one, especially, this was, I think, an amazing accomplishment of this work group. They developed under point number 1, a WIOA performance and transparency website or dashboard that allows any one of us in almost real time to see how our titles are performing against those targets and be able to make some adjustments associated with that. Well, the performance work group presents this work, and let me go into just one statement in addition about that dashboard that captures ongoing and historical data on enrollment by gender and race and ethnicity, performance indicators of employment outcomes, credential attainment, measurable skill gains across all of the titles. And it's a pretty powerful tool that I would invite any and all of us to take a look at. Our committee is excited about it and the possibilities of it. And in fact, our CIC members requires, or I should say the title of the performance work group presents the performance of these various titles to our committees on a regular basis and allows us to make some judgment and to make some pushback and to make some recommendations on how how we can continuously improve. And one thing I listen for as a member of the Continuous Improvement Committee, is there something that one title is doing that can be applied to another? Is there are there learnings that can cut across these titles? So we're always exploring that, but I'm exceedingly satisfied with the performance of that work group. The evaluation work group, their charge is a bit different. The evaluation work group is we're looking at performance targets, of course, but how do we evaluate ourselves, those who are involved in this enterprise of this workforce system? How do we evaluate whether or not our policies and our programs are achieving the outcomes that we want to achieve, that are given to us? What are the steps to understand how we're doing relative to the programs and policies that we've accepted challenge to meet? And well, this evaluation work group did an outstanding job with that. They developed a framework and tested that framework that shows the steps and each step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on, in terms of how a program, how someone who leads an initiative, how can you evaluate yourself? How can you judge whether or not you're doing the essential elements to achieve the goals that you want to make? And how can we, again, take advantage of some uniformity in terms of that approach across our system? And the evaluation work group did an outstanding job with that. They've test piloted the framework. They disseminated the results in terms of how can we make sure everybody's aware of this tool. And as a committee, we review that and assess performance. Are people catching on? Are they using it? Is it making a difference? Really, the evaluation work group has done some outstanding work to achieve the goals that we've been given to us. And the final one you'll see here, I won't speak to this one in the interest of time in terms of the service integration work group, but you have to ask the question, we're such a humongous state and the workforce system cuts across so many sectors. Let's look at those priorities. How can you integrate this work? How can someone, if they come into an office in some remote part of Illinois, how can that be a seamless interface relative to all aspects of what we offer as a workforce program? They were charged with doing that, and they did some great work in improving the access and taking that challenge to improve access and opportunity, collaborating across agencies. They looked at a self-assessment and said, are we really doing that? Are we accomplishing our goal? And they made some tremendous progress in that regard. Let me conclude with, again, thanking you for your time to, this is the last one I think is essential, because the state plan, let's cut to the chase on it. We have the state plan is really requiring us to use data and demand-driven workforce and education initiative. We're expected to achieve particular goals. And what we do with our committees and with other initiatives of the CIC is to support this state plan through performance, through evaluation, through policy, so that we can make a difference and achieve our goals throughout the state of Illinois. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Continuous Improvement Committee. Very, very excited about it and open to any questions that you might have.